Hey everybody, Lawler here with more Rocket League news. Going to be covering a recap for European Regional number 2. We've got Stage 1 finally in the books, taking the 32 teams that came from the closed qualifier and breaking it down to the top 16. But before we do that, as always, if you guys enjoy the content, make sure you guys give it a thumbs up, as well as making sure to hit subscribe and turning on notifications. And if you enjoy my content, as always, the easiest way to support me directly, all the social medias and stuff can be found in the description down below. Make sure you guys go give those a like and follow as well. So as a reminder, if you guys are new or don't know what's going on, we are officially technically like 1/13 through the season. And if you need information on that, drop those comments down below and I'll do my best to explain it. Maybe I'll do a follow-up video as a reminder, but there's a whole lot of Rocket League going on. So this past weekend was the second regional event that has gone down. We're officially on stage 2 moving forward. But we have 32 teams broken down into 16. And the top 16 will then go on into next weekend where they'll play to find the top 8 and then find a winner out of that bracket. So the big ones to note, obviously, and kind of the notable things in general, is round 1 of the regionals on Saturday was not displayed. But you should be able to see the 16 teams that were signed up here and their results. The big one to pay attention to is the fact that in round 1, we actually don't get to see any of these matches on stream. So Saturday starts off at 9 a.m. my time, which is 10 a.m. Eastern, and then they play that first match. They then have a little bit of a break, and then the official broadcast that we get to watch in round 2 starts there. From round 1, 2 major things to note. Number 1, BDS played a team by the name of Pioneers. Pioneers forfeited all their matches. They put out a tweet about this, basically stating that due to unforeseen circumstances, they weren't able to come and compete, so they just did not do so. They forfeited all their matches. People got a free win if they were up against them in the bracket. In round 1, that was Team BDS, so BDS getting a free win. Other than that, every other team that had the high seed, so the team that was expected to win, did. It was 3-1 across the board, except for Monkeys, who 3-0'd Minx, and Magnifico, who 3-0'd Berg. So pretty straightforward there. Things going as expected. Everybody getting their free win or the guaranteed win. So the teams that are in that group, BDS, Magnifico, Giants, Guild, Oxygen, FC Barcelona, Monkeys, and TLR. So TLR probably the biggest one that people may not recognize. Last Resort was super close last regional as well. I'm glad to see they made it back into the top 32. Not an easy thing to do. We drop down to round 2. So the way that it works is all the teams that are 1-0 will play each other. All the teams that are 0-1 play each other. 8 apiece. And we figure out who the best is until we get 3 wins or 3 losses. Whatever happens first ends up qualifying you or kicking you out. So in this circumstance, it was Barcelona versus Magnifico. Barcelona has been trending in a really good direction in the past week and a half, and they actually get a big win over Magnifico. For me, Magnifico was also a team that I wanted to see more of just because they performed very well in regionals last time, but we don't get to see them in the grid, so I don't really know where they stand up, and it's hard to put them in the power rankings because of that. So they do end up dropping to a really hot-looking Barcelona. BDS takes a win over Monkeys, which is very similar to how they performed recently in the grid. Guild over Oxygen, that one actually ended up going to 5. It ended up having 2 overtimes. The first game right out the gate was 1-0 in favor of Guild with a 6:25 overtime. So technically 2+ games in that one. Pretty exciting match going the distance. But ultimately Guild, so they boot camped last week, but they did end up coming back early from what I've been hearing. So they weren't actually in the boot camping like LAN center that they were playing in, but they still managed to get a win over Oxygen. Oxygen had a rough day. We'll get to that later. And then Giants ended up beating TLR 3-0. Nothing new there. And then when it came to the other side, the biggest one to note is that Libertas did end up winning. That was kind of the guarantee or the assumed answer. And Minx ended up winning as well in their match. We then drop down to round 3 where the 2-0 teams play each other and the 0-2 teams play each other to qualify or to be eliminated. And then obviously the 1-1 play each other as well. So you can see a high, mid, and a low section. In the high section, BDS, FC Barcelona, Giants, and Guild. BDS played Barcelona. It went the distance to 5. BDS ended up winning, and it was a pretty close match. Back and forth every other game, so they traded wins. BDS would win one, Barcelona would win one, and then they just keep going back and forth the entire time until ultimately BDS did end up winning in the finals of that. Giants versus Guild, a little bit more lopsided, where Giants ended up winning in 4. Game 1, Giants came out the gate 6-0, completely obliterated Guild, and then back and forth a little bit. Guild had some good performances, some good offense. And then it kind of settled down finally in Game 3. Game 3 was 2-1 in favor of Giants with an OT. And eventually, Giants ended up winning the next one 4-2. So pretty high flying in the beginning. Teams got used to it. Usually Game 3 is when the adjustments come out, and you saw that from both sides. And then eventually it ended up going to Giants. So BDS and Giants 3-0 in their group end up qualifying right away. Barcelona Guild will drop down in 2-1 and have another life. If we jump into the mid, the big results, Monkey ended up going over Berg. Oxygen did beat Minx. Magnifico does bounce back after being 0-1 and beating Nameless. And then TLR actually dropped to Libertas. Libertas was a team that last week in the power rankings I mentioned how they were kind of close to that 10th spot, but we gave it to Liquid. Libertas super close in this one as well. Ended up winning 3-2. And then the two teams that ended up eliminating were Pioneers and Team Orange Gaming in the lowers. We then jump down to round 4, which is teams that are 2-1 going up against other teams that are 2-1. And the big match was probably Barcelona versus Oxygen. Barcelona just continues to find these really tough wins, which is not the case from what we saw earlier in the preseason as well as up to now. So Barcelona, again, has found their footing. We talk about numerous times how it's going to take teams to develop and take time to figure out what their play style is, how they're going to adjust, what their results are going to be coming back and forth. And Barcelona has done that very well. So that is now essentially 2 weeks where Barcelona has performed well and come out in the top 8. So congrats to them. Magnifico ended up playing Monkeys. Monkeys actually ended up winning. If you guys don't know, Monkeys has recently benched Taz for Arju. If you guys know Arju, come from Mouse Sports, was basically the hero when Scrub ended up leaving early. So Monkeys looking better and better. They are a team that also in the past week and a half have made a roster change and have been trying to figure out what things are. And Arju has been able to basically transition the team into a little bit more, I guess, controlled play style, not afraid to slow down the play, actually dribble it downfield, as well as just super aggressive on offense when he needs to be. So he's really opened up that offense. Magnifico, very big surprise here for them to drop on this circumstance. So unfortunate for Magnifico that they take the loss here. Then the other big one as well, Libertas continuing and trending in that direction. Even though Guild is trying to figure out their new playstyle, saying that they're similar to like a space station, they do end up losing to Libertas in 5. It ends up coming down to game 5 in overtime. It is 0-1, super close game, and the only goal comes in overtime at 1:53 in favor of Libertas. So shouts to Libertas on that one for bumping them out. In the lower side, the teams that got eliminated were the Last Resort, Berg, and Nameless, which then brings us to round 5. So name 5, we've got 3 very notable names against 3 teams, and it is 2-2 at this point. You either win, you go in, you lose, you end up going home. The number 1, Oxygen versus Berg. Berg ends up upsetting Oxygen. This seems to be a case of Oxygen playing down to their competition, which is really weird. I've been trying to figure out what's going on with Oxygen based upon their play style. And it definitely seems like when they play against really fast and aggressive teams, they play more instinctual and stop worrying about the little things. Things just kind of click for them. But when they play against slower teams and they're basically forced to have to adjust to this awkwardness that some of these newer teams come in, they play down to their competition, they give up too much space, and then from there it ends up being a blowout. So Oxygen, I think, does a really good job as a team that can still get high notable wins against teams like Top Lokes and BDS and other teams like Vitality and guys that are at the very top, but for some reason they just can't seem to pull it together against these other teams, and I don't know why that is, honestly. I think a lot of focus is definitely put on Astral, I think too much almost even, to where they need to find a way to make the other players impactful and stop making Astral the focus. Part of the reason why is Astral, I think, as a player, is best when he can do whatever he wants. When he's not required to score every goal and make every opportunity, he does his best. And you saw that on Dignitas, the ability to, rather than going for the shot, he would create passes, and it gave him opportunities to try different things. And we got a bit of a taste of that when he first came into the team a long time ago, where he was able to make passes go cross field, and Pharaoh was the one putting them away, which just opened up a whole multitude of options. So I don't know what's going on with Oxygen necessarily, but I do hope they continue to bounce back. This is now 2 regionals where they have not made it into the top 16. That is a very big deal. So Oxygen is going to be taking a hit in the power rankings this week. Next up is Magnifico versus Fierce. 3-0 clean sweep. And then we get to the last one, Guild versus Minx. And super close. Another nail biter. Best of 5 going all the way to the end. And Guild in 2 overtimes ends up winning and closing it out. They lost the first overtime in game 2. But you're looking 3-1, 4-3, 4-3, 3-2. I mean, 1-goal games almost across the board. all but one. So a really close match. But Guild, as Gibbs said on broadcast, unlike Oxygen, manages to win when it matters most, and they do end up qualifying. So shoutouts to Guild for making the top 16. So on Saturday, that is your first half. That is Group A. That is all the matches for the 16 teams. And the 8 teams that end up making it in: Giants, BDS, Barcelona, Monkeys, Libertas, Magnifico, Barrage Esports, and Guild Esports. And I apologize, I've been calling them Berg. It is Barrage. We then go to Group E. This is 16 teams. Again, this was on Sunday of the previous weekend. And again, a lot of really exciting matches. Some again, coming down to the wire for teams that you would have expectations to just win out right away. Again, in round 1, these matches are played off stream. Vitality, Top Lokes ended up winning. Triple Trouble take a loss. Solary ends up winning with a forfeit from Your Ma. Venk ended up beating Nordavind, and then Singularity lost to Team Liquid. Team Liquid was actually the low seed coming into this, and Team Liquid won 3-1, so good for them. So we then jump down to round 2. First match, Top Lokes versus Fadeaway. If you guys don't remember Fadeaway, as I mentioned, that is Freaky's new team with Tigre and Ocelon. They ended up playing Top Lokes and sweeping them completely. 3-0 clean sweep, and a big result on that one. Obviously, a lot of people pretty keen on Top Lokes after their grid victory. So Fadeaway winning when it matters most. First game OT, second game 5-3, last game 1-0. So still a pretty close series, but Fadeaway does look the better. We then jump down to Vitality. They 3-0, 2 baguettes and a half. Solary and Team Liquid. Team Liquid gets their second win, so that puts Team Liquid 1 game away from qualifying. Really big there. And then Endpoint wins another one, also 1 game away from qualifying. 3-1 over Venk. On the low side of the bracket, so these are the teams that are 0-1. Trip Trouble does even out. So does Dignitas. So does Singularity. And then Nordavind ends up winning as well. So Triple Trouble, Dignitas, and Singularity, I think these are the things that make these teams better, is just even though they're in tough competition, they know how to bounce back immediately and get the wins that matter. So they do put themselves in level out 1-0. Singularity kind of cheating the system because they do get a free win and forfeit over Your Ma. We then jump down to round 3. This is your 4 teams that are 3-0. You've got 4 teams that are 0-2, and then 8 teams that are 1-1. Starting at the high end, it is Endpoint versus Fadeaway. Fadeaway wins again. This time it is 3-2. It looks like Endpoint had it, but they ended up getting reverse swept. It was 3-1 and 2-1 in games 1 and 2. And then from there out, Fadeaway held Endpoint to only 1 goal. For whatever reason it was, they just could not score. So after the reverse sweep, and it goes all the way, you're talking 2-0, 2-0, and 1-0. They completely shut out Endpoint, and Endpoint just could not find a way to score. They did whatever they could, Virtuoso bumps and demos. It just, nothing seemed to go to the back of the net. So Fadeaway, that's a really big bounce back from them and shows that they have the ability to hold out when it matters most. It's a lot of merit. Fadeaway did a really good job of actually spacing in that game where teams, realistically, when they play really aggressive, have a hard time trying to keep up that pace. Fadeaway and teams with Freaky in general aren't afraid to take the turtle, more passive approach and let teams push forward and then get them with a mistake on a counterattack. They show exactly why it's a pain in the butt here. The next one then down is Vitality and Team Liquid both trying to compete, and this one was really exciting. It ended up going in favor of Vitality 3-2. Both of Team Liquid's wins actually came in OT in both games 2 and 3. 2-1 scorelines in both. 3:18 OT in game number 2 and 16 seconds right off the kickoff in game number 3. So after game number 3, you win 2 OTs in a row as Team Liquid. You're 1 game away from qualifying, and then Vitality does what they do best. They shut you out in game 4 and 5, winning 2-0 and 3-0, and end up qualifying in their 3-0. So Team Liquid ends up dropping down. Unfortunate situation for them, but not before long. We jump into the middle, the guys that are 1-1. Top Lokes ended up beating Singularity. 2 baguettes and a half end up beating Dignitas, and this is where it got scary for Dignitas because they now only have 1 extra life. Venk ended up beating Triple Trouble, another big upset. And then Solary, a team that I recently have been talking pretty heavily about, where they don't look all that great. Like, they don't blow my mind, but they get wins, and that's all that matters. So Solary, big performance for them over Nordavind. We ended up then seeing Glory for Builders removed as well as Your Ma. Obviously, Your Ma forfeiting their last game. So S2V ended up moving forward as well as Game Up. We then jump into round 4. So these are your teams that are either 2-1 or 1-2. Endpoint versus Solary. Endpoint ended up losing to Solary 3-2. Another really close series, and that seems to be how EU goes nowadays. It is just neck and neck the entire time. The difference maker for Solary is actually winning an OT in game 3. Every game back and forth. 10 seconds in, they end up winning off a kickoff again. And then it just traded wins. Solar wins 1, Endpoint wins 1, but that difference maker of that OT could have been what it was for Endpoint to close it out. Either way, Endpoint ends up going to 2-2, and Solary ends up qualifying. It then got really scary for Top Blokes, a team that everybody just saw win the grid, ends up dropping a game to Venk. So Venk ends up qualifying here in another best of 5 going the distance, 3-2 with 1 OT. And then right below them was Team Liquid over 2 baguettes and a half, where Team Liquid ends up winning 3-1, but that does not tell the story. Game 1 in Team Liquid's favor, 3-0. 2 baguettes and a half bounce back very quickly. They win a 1-0 overtime, then lose a 2-1 overtime, and then it comes down to Game 4, where Team Liquid, again, only 1 goal. Team Liquid, I mentioned a long time ago at the very beginning of the season, how their playstyle could be better. You just continuously see that numerous times when they're under pressure, they force the ball into midfield for no one. And that's how they got beat a lot of the times, where they have possession, speed's in the corner, someone's in the corner, and they just throw it mid hoping for a pass, and ends up being a big clear downfield. So that's something that, in those circumstances, you just don't have to force it. You can just sit in the corner, hold on to the ball, force a 50, wait for your teammates to get in possession. And yes, you may not get a goal right now, but you are going to suffocate the other team eventually. And not forcing that issue is going to be very beneficial. So Team Liquid still falling for a lot of their flaws, but they are getting wins now. That's the big difference. Team Liquid is trending in the right direction, and you love to see it because all those players on that team are absolutely amazing. So shouts to Team Liquid for bouncing back over the past couple of weeks, starting to get more consistent results on the top. We then jump over to the lower side. Dignitas ends up getting eliminated by S2V. Unfortunately, I did not get to watch any of this match. Scoreline, though, 3-1 in S2V's favor, 4-1 in Dig, and then they got shut out 2-0, and then they got lost. And then they lost in a 1-goal game in 3-2. So it looks like Dig is competing, but obviously Violent Panda has been dealing with some tendonitis stuff. Obviously, Joris is trying to figure out his fit for the team. So again, a developmental team. I think Dignitas just needs more time. I feel like they're trying to figure out what this team can be, and it's very similar, as I've said, with Astral. Astral, initially when he came in, did not fit the bill the best. They looked kind of flat, and then as things progressed over time, they got really good. So again, Dignitas not one I want to count out, but missing here and in recent results as well. As much as a hard time we give Jesse, maybe it is not a bad idea for him to sub in so you can recover from injury, but we don't know the inner dynamics of what's going on over there. So hopefully the best for Dignitas, but this is a big loss. Singularity then ends up 3-0ing Nordavent, not surprised there. And then Triple Trouble ends up beating Game Up, so not surprised there either. They end up moving forward into the 5th and final round. We then jump into round 5. All these teams are 2-2. First up is Endpoint versus Singularity, where Endpoint ended up 3-0ing, and it wasn't even close. 4-1, 7-0, 8-2. I mean, you're talking, what, a 19-3 goal differential. Endpoint came to play nice and easy, wrap it up, and ship it. So Endpoint looking good. Unfortunately, Singularity gets removed there. 2 baguettes and a half. Looked like the better team, but S2V ended up winning. It's a big deal for them to make top 16 for the first time, so congrats to them. And then the last one was Top Blokes versus Triple Trouble. Another really good battle. These teams have come across each other numerous times in the grid. But Top Blokes is going to be the victor here. 3-1 over Triple Trouble, where essentially every game was an overtime. Game 1, Game 2, and Game 3, all OTs, where Triple Trouble took the third one to keep them alive. But then in Game 4, 5 minutes, no goals until the very last second, where Top Blokes ends up taking the victory. So 5 minutes of no goals in the entire game basically feels like one big long overtime, and then for it to end at 0 seconds kind of sucks. So Triple Trouble, super close to making top 16, not going to do it here. Top Blokes is going to fight to live another day. Obviously, that is very difficult for Triple Trouble because we don't get to see them as much as I'd like to, and with their recent results as well in the grid and how they've actually been performing pretty well, I would have loved to see it here in regionals. As for Top Blokes, you go from being super close to qualifying, almost throwing it, and then making it last second over the hardest competition probably, other than Singularity here. So again, big shouts to Top Blokes, doing it when it matters most. The issue I have with that though is they rely so heavily on Archie, it makes me a little bit worried. And that's where I have them in power ranks, where people want me to play them way higher. But when I see stuff like this, it's like, dude, you can't rely on Archie to pop off every time. Someone else has got to give. So I'm looking now at the other two. Flame and Cassio, one of you has to step up. So the 8 teams that end up making it for Group B are going to be Fadeaway, Renault Vitality, Solary, Liquid, Venk, Endpoint, Top Blokes, and S2V. If you want to take a look at the graphic here, then you've got all 16 teams. These are the results and how they performed. And best of luck. If you guys want a continuation of this, next week, Thursday is going to be another grid, week 5 of the grid. And then on Friday is going to be the North American grid. And then Saturday and Sunday, we're going to take the top 16 teams. On Saturday, we're going to find our top 8. And then Sunday, single elimination bracket. And we'll see how it all plays out. So a lot more exciting Rocket League action coming at you guys very soon, with power rankings coming out most likely before then. North America is a lot easier to do power rankings, but Europe is just a royal pain in my butt every single week. I'm probably going to take some dice. My friend just made me some dice for my birthday for D&D and stuff. I'm probably just going to take these and roll them and see what I get, because that seems to be the best way to do it. But that is going to wrap it up for this video. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, make sure you drop those down in the comments below. And if you guys enjoy the content while you're down there, make sure you give the video a thumbs up, as well as making sure to hit subscribe and turning on notifications. That is going to wrap it up for me. Appreciate you guys watching. Peace.